Did you know that landscape photography was actually one of the first genres of photography ever since the history of photography started? But for some reason, up to this day, not many people actually understand landscape photography. Or maybe perhaps not as many people as we want actually understand us, landscape photographers. A couple of days ago, I was talking to some friends who I haven't seen in so long. And it was the first time we got to talk about what I do. And basically, their question was, what is your aim when you're shooting landscape photography? Of course, they see photography more in the perspective of a portrait photographer or an events photographer who also aim to document what they are shooting. In comparison to landscape photography, wherein the aim isn't actually to document the place, but more to use it as a way of creating art and ultimately to express. So in this video, let's talk about how you can use landscape photography as a way to express yourself. Before anything else, right before I started shooting this video, I realized something. This is actually going to be my 100th upload on YouTube. And basically, before I get onto this video, let me just thank all of you who might have been watching continuously whatever I've been posting on YouTube, and those, of course, who have been subscribing and commenting and basically sending out support. Thank you very much. This is video number 100. So why would you want to express with your landscape photography? Well, the simplest reason is, and I do believe this principle, is that if there's no purpose or there's no hard purpose for whatever you're doing, you're not going to do it well. And the same applies to landscape photography. If you don't really know why you're doing something, even if you're enjoying it, then there might be less motivation into it. There might be less emotion put into it and ultimately less passion into it. And that is why I wanted to share this particular mindset that I have whenever I'm shooting or editing landscape photographs. I want to be able to also express with these photos even if there are no people in it. I myself am not in the photo, but for some reason I'm able to convey a certain emotion. And I do think I can claim that I am effective in this because I know that some of the people in my audience are actually able to connect with the photos that I post or the prints that I show them. So expressing yourself with landscape photography isn't, of course, as clear-cut as talking to people or sending them a message or singing them a song. But you know that somehow you're able to transfer the emotion to your audience because one way or another, it also hits them and they kind of somehow feel what you were feeling the moment you were taking the photo or the moment you were editing. Now, if you are a landscape photographer, here is one inconvenient truth that you would have to embrace. It's the fact that the photo or the artwork that you want to come up with never actually presents itself to you exactly the way you want it. It's never as easy as documenting something. It's always seeing beyond the actual scene and also seeing the potential that the scene is giving you. Let me show you this one example. So we were shooting at Doña Remedios Trinidad in Bulacan. And basically, this is the entire scene. You can see that this was shot with a wide lens and that there are so many hills around and so many trees and so many visual factors to consider. So I was shooting with two cameras at the time. I had the A7C with a 70 to 200 millimeter, and now of course you can see the difference when I am able to zoom in quite far. So I chose to zoom in with the 70 to 200 and this is what I got. Now obviously in this photo I'm using the fog as a way to create depth and ultimately to create a certain mood. But of course, there's actually more to that than meets the eye. If you're shooting in RAW with a particularly capable camera, then you would know that there's actually so much more you can do in terms of bringing out detail and also taking some out in refining the final photograph. And here I just really wanted to convey a certain mood of peace and serenity. And this is actually how it turned out. Now, with those examples, you can actually see that the final output is so much different from the actual scene, especially since I was actually zooming in so much. Again, the goal is not to simply document the place. The goal is not to simply take a picture and show other people, this is what the place looks like. Your goal is to actually tell a story, or at the very least, provoke some emotion to get them curious about your photo. Here's another example. A couple of months ago, we made a trip to Dingalan, Aurora, and I actually did a video about that trip. But as I was driving back, I had the urge to stop because I saw the mountains from a distance. And I could see the potential of what I can do, even if it was actually during noon and the light was pretty harsh. So I brought out the A7IV with a 70 to 200 and put in a simple CPL filter. Now here's what I got from that shot. Now you can see that it's actually pretty flat. There's not much depth into the photo, but I wanted to be able to actually show the patterns of the mountains and how the clouds and the light interacts with these mountains. And this is what I did. I cropped it into a square and I basically shaped the light using simple radial tool and graduated filters on Lightroom. That simple. And I also wanted to just bring out more of the texture of the clouds because even if this was a handheld shot, the texture of the clouds were really smooth and I wanted to bring some contrast between the texture of the clouds and the texture of the trees on the mountain. And again, if you look back at the original image, so much has changed because what I intended to do was not to document the place, but to really just show a different perspective or simply to interpret that landscape. Now, this last example is actually one of those photos that I think I will never lose emotional connection to. Let me tell you the story behind, or the idea behind this photo. So the pandemic happened. And even if we can technically travel, there are so many obstacles before actually being able to go somewhere and take photos because we had to limit the movement, of course, and the exposure to what's essential. And it's only very recently that we were actually able to freely go to the places we wanted to go without being too scared of actually catching the virus. And throughout the course of the pandemic and all the lockdowns, one place that I really wanted to go to was Dingalan, Aurora. As I said in the video that I shot out there, Dingalan, Aurora was one of the places that I really wanted to visit again because it is where I started as a landscape photographer. It's the first place where I first did landscape photography. And I really wanted to see how differently I would shoot the place. So, over the course of the pandemic, it was actually that place that I've always been wanting to go to. So, there was a lot of frustration. And during the height of the pandemic, especially during the hard lockdowns, it was the place I was always daydreaming of. So I had this idea. When I was there, I was shooting this particular scene, which was right before sunrise. You can actually see a bit of light over the horizon already. And what I did was I fused that shot with this earlier shot of the Milky Way. Then I had this idea. I wanted to somehow illustrate the feeling of finally being able to break cabin fever. Hence, the title of this photo is actually Breaking Cabin Fever. So what I did was I captured another shot with a bit more foreground and also put that in and blended that in. But ultimately, the biggest goal was to actually use a shot from where I live and use it as a frame. I wanted to create this photo that somehow shows what I wanted to happen during the pandemic, which was that when I opened my door, Dingalan would be there. When I opened my door, the great outdoors would be there. And this is how it turned out. So as you can see, that photo was a mixture of so many elements taken both from the location itself and another location, which is my place. So the goal of taking that photograph was definitely not to document Dingalan or to document my condo or whatever. The goal was to show what I was feeling, and this was in retrospect. The goal was to somehow create this image that would be representative of how it felt to be stuck away from the outdoors that I always loved. The goal was to also show the feeling of finally being able to go there. Of course, if you look at it, it's not all too realistic. Unless, of course, you'd be able to build a house right by a cliff with very turbulent water, and of course, you can see the Milky Way from that spot. But ultimately, it's not too realistic, it's a bit dreamy, and that was actually what I was going for. I guess as a way to end this video, maybe you can share with me what you thought of that, or what you felt when you saw that image. And there we go. Of course, if you have any questions about anything that I just babbled about, you can leave them down below in the comment section. And if you want to learn the process of how I created that photo, then tell me in the comments and I might just, maybe I'll go live or maybe do another video demonstrating how to do that. And if you are new to this channel, my name is Nicco Valenzuela. I am a landscape and architectural photographer, and this channel talks about landscape photography and many other things about photography, the gear, the accessories, and the tech surrounding it. And if you are into that, then please do consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell so you can know whenever I upload something new. And again, thank you for watching this 100th video on my channel.